Hello, everyone. Welcome to the Etech Leadership Table. This is a podcast where we invite you to pull up a chair, grab a cup of coffee, and join us as we tackle some remarkable discussions on everything leadership. I'm Melissa Wood. I'm your host. I'm the Dean of Leadership Development at Etech Global Services. Today, we're bringing some energy and some excitement to the adult table with Justin and Melissa on the Etech Leadership Podcast. So, today's topic, when you're at the kids' table, you don't really feel heard sometimes, right? And so we're coming to the big table today, and Justin's going to talk about a serious topic about basically how to build a contact center culture where everyone feels heard and valued, right? So, when you would sit at the kids' table, sometimes it was over there in the corner, but sometimes you would go to an event where the kids' table, where they took a lot of, they kind of set it beside the adult table. They decorated it, and you kind of wanted to be at the kids' table. So everyone needs to have a voice. And Justin, if you don't know Justin, let me do a little mini intro and for Justin. He is the founder and principal advisor. That means he's not a principal of a school. He's just a principal advisor of Sherpa, right? And so he's been doing this many, many years. Justin, how many years have you been in this contact center world?
A couple. So there's the answer, and then there's the answer with the asterisk. I first made an outbound phone call out of a contact center as a 12-year-old because the local newspaper I worked for thought it would be a smart strategy to have preteens do some prospecting for newspaper subscriptions in the evening, cash under the table. But really, Melissa, so after school, I got into hospitality and contact center along the way. It's been now over 20 years that I've been, in some capacity in operations or working with and alongside contact center leaders.
Yeah. I love the way that you said that the reason why you got into business, and make sure I'm getting this right so you can correct me at the table. We can do all kinds of corrections at the table because, if you look at a family table, there's all sorts of corrections. We can rumble if you want to, Justin, is what I'm saying. Okay, we can rumble. All right. So what I understand you saying is that you got in this business with your own company because you realized that the customer experience leaders needed an advocate. They needed additional help and additional support. And that's where your company comes in. Is that what I understand that you guys, did I butcher that up a lot? Can you kind of elaborate on that a little bit about your heart of why you started this company?
Yeah, Melissa. So there were a couple things that I observed, as I was looking to figure out like what I wanted to be when I grew up, I guess, but more importantly, like who and how I wanted to serve others. Yeah. And what I felt often as a leader, not just of a contact center, but in really any customer facing functions, is there was so much incredible value and worth in my team and what they were doing that was often either unnoticed or downplayed in terms of its significance. And what we were really trying to do is help customer service leaders, help contact center teams, help people who are designing and delivering CX feel more confident and capable in not just their ability to lead themselves, their ability to lead their teams, but also their ability to help others understand the impact that they've had. And over the years, that's meant, a number of things. Sometimes it's us doing research. Sometimes it's us being in-house as consultants. In some cases, it's working inside and with technology companies, also helping them design and deliver solutions that help people solve their problems.
Yeah. And I think, that's why I really see you. I use the word advocate. Maybe it's really an ambassador. It's an ambassador for CX, right? Promoting what they do in-house, internally, externally. I love the way you married the two, them personally as leaders and helping to lead other teams. I think that's important. And some people, they work in this environment and they just work in the environment, but it looks like somewhere your heart and your mind came together and you are now we're talking about the leadership role of it. So I think that's really important. For today, you and I could have many topics we talk about. So podcasters, if you're taking notes, and if you've been on this podcast before, great leaders take notes. You take notes. You may hear something, but if you don't take an index card, write your key things that we're learning from Justin today, type it in on your notes, do something, but take notes that you can go back and remember it by. That is a requirement at the adult leadership table. You got to be able to take notes. So we want to make sure, Justin's going to walk us through, here's what you're going to learn. When you get off of this table today, you would have learned how to have a voice, how you can give everyone a voice where everyone feels heard, not only just heard, but valued. And Justin's going to walk us through. So you ready to get through some questions I have for you?
Let's do it, Melissa. I'm excited.
Okay. I only have 4 questions that I have for you, and you can add or subtract however you want to.
Cool.
But let's look at the high stress environment. I mean, you've been doing this since you were 12-year-old illegally. That's for the record. So high stress environment, and it's a high turnover environment. The contact center would be, and giving employees an authentic voice and making them feel truly heard. It's challenging, but it's important, right? And so what impact can prioritize an employee voice have on operational metrics? So what impact does it have by giving the employees a voice? First question.
Yeah, so gosh, you're going to get 2 versions of every answer probably. So you have 4 questions.
That's
I probably
okay.
have 8 answers, Melissa. I'm just going to warn you.
I'm taking notes.
Here's the easy answer. What's the impact significant? Okay.
Okay.
How and why? Let's actually look at the entirety of your question there. You asked, what is the impact that giving an employee's voice can have on operational metrics? And I think there's 2 problems that need to be solved there. One is the mechanism for enabling people's voices to be heard. Because let's be super clear, they have opinions, they have a voice, they're already sharing it. And so if you don't have a way of tapping into it, all that you're doing is just missing out on a conversation that's happening without you. That's the first problem to solve. The second problem to solve is what do we actually need to be focused on and thinking about when it comes to operational metrics for our contact centers, and whether you're a service team, whether you're a sales team, like all of those things matter. And what I have observed, going to that point first, Melissa, is that far too often the measures that we are using to validate the value of the contact center, they are short-sighted and they are not actionable.
Okay.
Short-sighted in this way. One is that they're often focused on 1, maybe 2 kind of key value drivers. One of those is operational effectiveness, and this is things like costs or revenue generation. It's common things there. Or we're looking at customer sentiment, surveys, all that kind of stuff. Totally missing the mark on how do we look at the strategic impact that those interactions and what the team knows can have on the broader business. So I'll stop there because that can be a long conversation. The second part of the metrics piece, though, is by me saying things aren't actionable, way too much of what we measure and talk about has already happened. If you look at most of the dashboards, most of the KPIs, everything is reflective of the past, and very little is actually predictive and helping organizations be more proactive in driving the results they want. You look at most coaching conversations, you look at most dashboards, you look at most reviews, and it's around, hey, your satisfaction rate was this, or your handle time was this, or outcome. Very few leaders are like, hey, what are the things that, if done, will lead to higher customer retention, will lead to greater efficiency, greater whatever. So that piece, I think, needs turned on its head. The mechanism, to me, look, I think you and I can, if we want to, explore that more, but it's really about just having a intentional, systematic approach to letting people know that not only is your voice wanted, but it's valued and it's acted on as much as possible. It won't always be acted on, because this doesn't always make sense. It's not always what's best for all of us, but you need to know that like it's being considered, it's being weighed with everything else that has to happen here.
Okay. All right. I'm going to have to refill the ink in this pen. So I want to take the metrics, something that you said that I really picked up on here, made me think about the proactive versus reactive. I'm in Texas, and I know, every state loves their football, right? And we think about high school football. I talked about this on a previous podcast, but when you talk about we're so reflective, we listen to a call after the fact, we look at a metric after the fact, like it's always reflective of what we've already done. I think about high school football, and I don't know if you played sports. I don't know if you were like a superstar sports athlete or whatever, but in the high school football team, I remember they practiced all week. They played on Friday nights, but on Saturday morning for 1 hour, listen what I'm saying. On Saturday morning for 1 hour, they watched the video of them playing on Friday night. That was reflective, but they only spent 1 hour at the end of the week. Everything else was proactive to win the game. So if it works in high school sports, and you said it needs to be turned on its head, like that's kind of what you mean. Like there's no need for the team sitting there watching their entire, like every game they played all week, not out there learning to block, not out there learning to tackle, not out there learning to run and hit, like experience in the home run, like what's going to get you the touchdown. Does that make sense? If they just watched reactive videos of how they played all week, they would lose every game. And so I really am impressed. That's just a vision that came to my head when you talk about turning it upside down. In business, we're doing the opposite. We're watching how we did, what we didn't do, what we did, what we didn't do. We're watching that for the most part instead of on Saturday at 1 hour. So I love that.
Here's the problem that creates. So I'm going to use another analogy, and I'm going to tie it into Texas as well for the heck of it.
Go for it.
I spend a little bit of time cooking barbecue.
Okay.
Good brisket does not happen by accident.
Okay.
Right. So what's a reflective measure of good brisket? Hey, if I sell out early, people are coming back for seconds. They're really satisfied. That's what I want, right? That's my outcome I'm going for. How do I get there? I know that how I get there is by a 50-50 blend of salt and pepper, by using post oak, by smoking it at 225 until it probes like butter, right? And that temperature is going to be somewhere between 195 and 205. Just depends, because brisket is a fickle thing here.
Yeah.
I know that if I do these things, I will sell out by noon. People will enjoy it. They will come back for seconds. Yet if I look at most experiences that organizations deliver, they are happy accidents when they go right. We get to this point, it's like, hey, our retention rate was higher than normal today. What drove it? And now we're doing this discovery of like, well, I don't know what drove it. Let's figure out what maybe it was, rather than saying, hey, we know we did these things. Because we did these things, this is the outcome that we should suspect. And then guess what? No surprises when we get the outcome that we engineered. That to me is when I talk about turning it on its head, it's about intentionally engineering the experiences we're trying to deliver for customers, for constituents, for employees. It doesn't matter.
Yeah, that's going to go down in this podcast. If you're taking notes, happy accidents. I have not heard that terminology before, but that is really the way some of us mean it.
Bob Ross, the thinker, like he messed something up and he's like, oh, it's a happy accident. It's like, we can't afford to have happy accidents in business.
Yeah, and that's the way. I love the way that you're turning that around. So as we go, so we looked at the metrics part about having a voice. Now let's go to something profound you said earlier about conversations are happening without you, right? They're happening. When we talk about having a voice, it's you're missing out. So how do we get, what is the impact of that when we talk about prioritizing employees' conversations to hear their voices on conversations that are happening that we're not tapping into?
Yeah. So Melissa, I'm going to answer that question by first asking you a question.
Okay.
When you have a thought or an opinion about something and you don't share it, what is often going through your head that prevents you from sharing that?
that they're not going to do anything with it. What's the use?
So how are our employees any different than us in why we hold back? Right? So the question isn't why does this happen? It's how do we overcome it? So this is what's like, to me, is like, it hurts sometimes because this isn't hard stuff. You share things with people that you trust. You share things with people that you know will take it with a level of gravity. You share things with people that you know will if it it comes down to like, do I trust you? Do I have faith in you to do the right thing? Do like that is the core of what this is. So it's like, it's not just a matter of like, hey, we've got the suggestion box, we've got the email, we've got the thing. It's like, that is vanity. Like, the real work is every single person investing in building an environment of trust and accountability and visibility to say that, look, you and I, like, whatever our dynamic is in this environment, we are creating places where you can trust that we can have open conversations. We can have tough conversations. One of my favorite mentors always challenged me and said, Justin, like, if you have a problem, the best way to get over it is to drive through the heart of it, right? And it is like, it is difficult, and it is scary, and it is uncertain. That is the only way that we get better. That is the only way we understand what's actually happening. And to go back to one of the very first things you and I said, is it's like, hey, like, okay, let's talk about the kids table versus the adult table. I have 4 kids, and there are times that there are bits of truth that come out of any one of their mouths that I'm like, it hurt that you said it, but nobody else was willing to tell me that, so thank you. Like, that is what we're talking about here. And there's all sorts of devices and mechanics you can get to of like the system and the process of like, hey, do we have one-on-one? Do we go for coffee? Is it an email you send me? Like, all of those things, any of those things can work if you have an environment that is high trust, high accountability.
Okay, I hear what you're saying. So, because the second big question I was having was, what are the best formal and informal listening? But I'm hearing what you're saying. Like, we gotta first things first. First things first is you've got to build a culture of trust. If you're taking notes, there has to be a culture of trust. And we teach at Etech, and then I've been teaching leadership development now for 29 years. So we teach the trusted advisor model here. That is who we are. It's not what we do, it's who we are. That means we even teach an equation that we got from Andrea Howe and Charles Green that says credibility plus reliability plus intimacy. That's the relationships. That makes like your kids want to tell you things, right? Because they have a relationship with you. So credibility, reliability, intimacy divided by, because it's an equation, self-orientation. Meaning, when you're going to take this information, am I building trust? Is it about my goals or is it about the goals of the team? So if a team believes that you're credible, so here's how you do it. This is the matter. If you're credible, you know your business, you know what you're talking about. And Justin obviously knows what he's talking about, because he could give us, Melissa, here's the top 10 things to do, but he's trying to say, listen, friends, at this table, you got to start here. You got to start with the trust, credibility, reliability. They got to be able to count on you, right? That you're going to do what you say you're going to do. Intimacy, that you can't just be an email or bring them in once, you fly in once a year and tell them to tell you their deepest, darkest secrets. You've got to have a relationship formed. And then divided by self-orientation. Your self-orientation, meaning, is it about you or about others? Your self-orientation must be low, because that's a dividing factor. If your self-orientation is high, they trust you less. So given all that, I love that you're talking about building that trust. If a company has that trust, if they're working, Justin, on building that trust, like, what mechanisms, now that we've got that in place, what have you seen be successful? What are
absolutely.
Some mechanisms?
Yeah, and look, just one thing I want to underscore, because like, this feels really good, and like we can paint this on a wall or put it in a poster,
Yeah.
and we're like, yes, gosh, we feel good about this. And my challenge with this always, Melissa, is like, my job, and I think any of our jobs, isn't to feel good. Like, I can tell you this list, and look, I'll tell you the list because it's like, we need something to make us feel good. That's not going to make us better. Like, my job is to make myself better. It's to make my team better. It's to make any of us better. And that means we can't be okay with complacency. And it's not just an employer thing. Like, why do all these businesses say we strive for 5 or whatever it is on survey results? Same thing. It's no different than like, hey, we really want you to tell us what your experience is like. But it's like, well, we don't actually want to know what the warts you see. And like, so again, I think every single one of us at some level, we really do need to get uncomfortable here, because we are making it easy on ourselves, because why wouldn't we? Life is hard. Okay. That said, let me get to your question now, because I wouldn't be a good guest if I didn't answer your question, Melissa.
You're already being a great guest because you're helping us to be uncomfortable. And I love that. I love that it's helping us to be uncomfortable. This is what we call a rumble. You know, we're talking about the difficult things. Let's rumble. So after we said those things, we heard you. I hope everybody's taking notes here. Pull up to the table. Now answer the question.
All right, cool. So I think about it in a couple of ways. The first thing that I do is I just think of these as like my weekly ongoing pulse of my team. One of the mechanisms that I use is something called a Fast 5. Fast 5 is just 5 questions that the intention is like, hey, it's just every single person at the beginning of the week, the end of the week, whatever fits their rhythm. It's like, I just want to hear from you. What's something that you're celebrating right now? What was a big accomplishment from last week? What's the number one thing that has to win this week? What are things that are blocking or getting in your way? And how can I best support you right now? Like, just this, again, just give me a quick pulse on what's going on, especially for my leaders, because this helps drive our one-on-ones. This helps, do all of those types of things. That I think is one mechanism that can be really helpful. Another mechanism that I love using with my team, more broadly, is even as simple as a start, stop, continue. And this might be getting together for coffee. It might be in a group setting. And it's as easy as this. It's like, hey, if you were calling the shots today, if you were in my role, or if you were running this function, or if you had to make a decision about this, what's something that you think we should stop doing? What's something you think we should keep doing? What's something that you think we should start doing? Amazing what can come out of that. But the other, gosh, there's so many things here, Melissa, that like, just like small things that to me are about being predictable. They're about being persistent. Something else that comes to mind for me is, the term I've heard used are stay interviews. And it's this idea of like, hey, we do exit interviews that aren't reliable, don't always happen. It's like, but stay interviews more around like what keeps you here. Yeah. And I would do stay interviews at different intervals. One is honestly shortly after hiring. It's like, hey, what brought you to this company? What brought you to the contact center? What are you really aspiring to do? Earlier, Melissa, you said, hey, it's high stress, it's high turnover. Shouldn't be surprises to us. In a lot of cases, it can be entry-level work. In a lot of cases, it's dealing with volatile, undesirable types of situations. There's lots of factors on why it is naturally a transient place. The question we have to get behind is like, what is the value that this transient place can deliver to someone right now? And what's the value that it can create and help preparing them for whatever's next? Because chances are for a lot of them, what's next? And I found that if we have a mechanism to understand that what brought them here and where they're looking to go and how they're looking to grow, whether in their career, within the business, whatever, we can start to help them see relevance to why should I stay here? How are my leaders investing in me beyond delivering a great experience or meeting my quota or whatever the thing right in front of me is. So these stay interviews we would do after they join. To me, I do them at milestone moments. So maybe this is every quarter, it's once a year, and it's like, hey, why are you still here? How are you looking to be grow or challenge this quarter? It's just like that kind of stuff outside of the day-to-day, just like being present for people. Like, to me, I trust someone that I'm familiar with, and don't mistake, familiarity with unprofessional, right? There's like, you can have really healthy relationships with your employees and keep it very professional. And that, especially in contact centers, like, you can see the line skew where it's like, hey, the supervisor last week was on they were, a rep themselves. And, now that, so it's like, there's all this blurring that can erode at some of those things as well. But it's like, if we're intentional, if we're structured, a lot of really good mechanisms. But to me, it's about a posture of seeking to understand, right? That's the first piece. So any of those mechanisms are about creating places where you can share. So that's the first key part of it. The second key part of it is to then have a mechanism for sharing, how and why you're interpreting and acting on it. And maybe saying, hey, guys, last month we had a bunch of these one-on-one conversations with everyone, and here's some key trends that I heard from you. As a result of what I heard, here's what we're changing, here's what we're improving, and most importantly, here's what we're not acting on and why. Giving some context to help understand is like, hey, there's some feeling here, because what happens was, so there's two things that happen. Either we take the feedback and the perception is we don't do anything with it, or right? Or it's like, okay, why'd they ask that? Like, they don't care. They don't understand why we didn't do anything. So that's one. But the other interesting thing is, I remember a couple of years ago, was working with a client, and they had done this big kind of employee focus group. And one of the things they heard is that people wanted the office to change and some improvements to the break room and all this. So they made these improvements, and then people got really upset because they never shared that the improvements were the result of employee feedback. They just thought the leadership team was like, hey, we're going to make some changes. Once people understood it was based off of what the majority of people wanted, the perspective changed. So it's really those, like, you want to systematize this. It's two things. Have a mechanism for getting people to share, share, and then have a mechanism for helping them understand how you're interpreting and acting on it or not.
I love this. This is good stuff, Justin. I knew we were going to have a good time. At this table. You're coming back. I don't know how I'm going to pull you back, but I'm bringing you back to this table. There's just so much here. Like, every time you take a question, you break it down. There's just so much, like, in each question that you're giving us some nuggets. Now, the creating places to share. Let me tell you what I hear from that. The Fast Five, brilliant. Start, stop, and continue. That is something that I think people use a while back that maybe we've gotten away from. I actually have a little notepads that say start, stop, and continue. You can pass that out. People fill that out for you. The stay interviews. I love that you added the intervals. I see the stay interviews got really hot topic a few years ago at some of these, people were doing shows on stay interviews. We started stay interviews in our company, but the intervals, that to me is a leadership pro tip. I think the intervals is something that's missing. I want to go back to our Rumble a little bit. When you gave us these mechanisms, if you actually are consistent, like you said, that will build trust. If you create a consistent mechanism where you're saying, hey, give me a pulse. If you're doing that consistently with your teams, if you're doing start, stop, and continue consistently, if you're doing some stay interviews, that starts to build trust. Then we go into the second part where you said, I think we drop the ball, we fumble. It's how we are acting on it. And let me pull out a leadership pro tip I heard from you there is we're not acting on it, and here's why. That is something I haven't heard many people say, Justin. I've heard people say, your voice, and we listened, and now we've got a popcorn machine in the break room, and we've got this and we've got that. But I haven't heard many leaders that are pointing the CX industry in the right direction talk about here's what you asked for, and here's why we're not doing it. We do that with our kids. Our kids ask for something that we don't feel like they need right now. Like they might want a cell phone and they're 4 years old. You know what I'm saying? And they've asked for it, and we want to hear them. We want to hear, maybe they're in 6th grade. I don't know when kids get cell phones these days, but we want to come back and say, we heard you. You know, here's what I'm willing to do, but here's what we're not willing to do, and here's why. Like we do that raising our kids. That's the right thing to do.
So I asked the question of, so why don't most of us do it? And it goes back to this point of being uncomfortable. But the truth is, the drivers of apathy, the drivers of dissent, the drivers of frustration don't come from the things that I know you heard and acted on. It came from the things that I know you heard and are now not confronting. That was, before you and I had a conversation, this was something that, came up in another conversation of like, how often do we hear something shared in a big group and in the big group we're like, yeah. And then we start to walk away and we're like,
no, yeah.
That is our obligation as leaders. Again, and like I'm projecting what I feel my personal obligation is it's like, it's not to just go out and make us feel good, it's to make us be better. And if we do it well, we will feel good. But if we go out with the intent of like, I just need to feel good about this, like there's lots of things that we will compromise on for the sake of feeling good. But turns out if you like turn the dial up just a little bit and are willing to push yourself just a little bit and are willing to be uncomfortable for just a little bit, like we come out of it so much better than we could have even imagined for ourselves.
I love that. So that goes into my final couple of questions I want to ask you. So we talk about speaking up. You've touched on this a little bit, but there's all sorts of biases that people can have and companies can have, and they need to overcome that. So how can companies identify and overcome barriers maybe they created that allow people to speak up? To make people feel undervalued or marginalized?
You overcome it by owning it.
Okay.
Look, bias, perspective, lens, experience, whatever word you want to use there, what we're trying to say is that everyone has a unique set of experiences, of beliefs, of influences that shape their perspective. A company is no different in that its culture, its values, and the way it lives them out is all of those shaping factors manifesting through their executives, through their leaders, through their people. And so you've got like macro and micro ways that this manifests inside of a business. So that part, like it exists. That's not the thing that we should worry about. What we should worry about is how do we own what it is? How do we understand then how it needs to be shaped or spoken into so that it gets us to the place that's best for whoever's involved in that, right? So as an example, I remember there was a moment in time where was leading a team and we were going through a pretty big transformation. We were bringing multiple sites into one site, multiple systems into one system, multiple skills into a universal skill. And there were some decisions that we made that we foobarred around leaders that we brought on or didn't bring on, training that we did or didn't do. And you can say that all of those decisions were based off of our bias or experience or perspective, right? Ultimately, they were based off of knowing what we knew in that moment of time, what we believed to be best. And what we believed to be best was wrong. Okay. Most people choose at that moment to posture themselves as like, let's not talk about it, let's move forward, or let's whatever it is, or just like keep going. Hey, we're committed. What we chose to do in that moment was own it and say, look, we screwed up. Here's why we made the decisions that we made. Here's why we acted the way that we acted. Here's why we led the way that we led. And we now recognize that that was wrong. Here was the intent behind it. Here's how we realize it has to shape it. You know, it was around that time, Melissa, that probably one of the quotes that I reference most often came to mind for me. And it's Maya Angelou. And it was, people will judge you by your actions, not your intentions. You may have a heart of gold, but so does a hard-boiled egg. This to me is the root of that. It's like, how do we overcome it? How do we get people to want and to be willing to share up? Is that they see we are willing to own our mistakes. We are willing to own our bias, our experience, our perspective. And then we are willing to be vulnerable in having it challenged and it's shaped. If you go first, others will follow. That to me is like, what is the lesson here? It's like, you want people to do it, model it first. Model it first, and you model it by owning it, being transparent, and willing to have it challenged.
That's powerful, powerful. I've got own it written down here several times, and I believe I've seen it. I've seen it year after year with hundreds, and I've worked with thousands of leaders. If you go first, others will follow. It's a cascade method, right? And if you go first by owning it. John Maxwell, I'm a facilitator for John Maxwell, and he says, when you fall down, pick something up. See, a lot of people, you've seen those people that fall down, Justin, and they hurry up and get up like nobody noticed and nobody saw them. And they didn't really learn anything. John Maxwell says, when you fall down, figure out what got you there, learn from it, and then get back up. So that's owning your failures. And we fail those that we work with, we fail our families, we fail our partners, and we fail at, in life in general. But we need to pick something up, find out and own it. That's what you're saying. Own your failures, and then say it instead of just acting like we didn't fall, we didn't make a mistake, not talking about it. That's a hard no. I love that. Okay, we got to wrap this up. We got to go. We can't sit at the table forever. We got to go, Justin. But there's some risk when companies don't own it, when they don't create spaces where people can have conversations, when they're not creating spaces where they're tapping into those conversations that are being had that they're not listening to. Like, I love that you said those conversations are being had out there. You're just missing out on them. What are some risks? Conversely, what are some of the biggest potential costs and risks if a company fails to prioritize making employees feel heard and valued?
Yeah. So the easy answer here, Melissa, is that the risk is turnover, but the wrinkle to that, I think, is it's more nuanced than turnover. You are like, your people who are really smart, your people who are like recognize the value that their voice and perspective brings, they will be the first to go. What means then is that, like, who you are left with is probably the ones that you were hoping and probably should have not have in the organization, right? So what happens is it's not just that you have turnover, it's like it's your best people that can go first. So what then starts to happen is, you've got this dissent and apathy that exists inside of your organization. And, I think the trend word in the past couple of years around this has been the idea of quiet quitting. But if you go back to a Harvard Business article from, I think, 1972, it talks about this state of psychological absence. And psychological absence is it's checking out. It's that, like, it doesn't matter. Nobody cares. Right?
Yeah, quiet staying.
Yes. And so that then, it's not just about the employee, but it's like everyone that employee can touch and influence. So now other employees start to degrade, the service they're providing or the work they're doing is degraded, right? It's just withering on the vine of, like, what's happening inside of the organization. And to me, those costs can get very difficult to measure and to know. And the effects of it, I think, are way beyond anything an organization can imagine, because what an organization can understand easily is, like, oh, turnover's down or up, or productivity's down, right? There's these financial metrics that we look at, or time, that we're like, hey, we can equate it to a number or to a dollar, so it's easy. We don't think about the cultural ripples that go in and out of the organization. So that to me is a big risk. I think another risk here is that it stagnates innovation and the opportunity for an organization to adapt and change. Lots of examples that I could share in this, but what I know to be true is that leaders, no matter their action and intention, will become detached from the reality of that moment where a customer is interacting with whoever is serving them. We can look at dashboards, we can get reports, but like, unless, and we can't, like, if we are really leading our team, like, even if you spend a little bit of time every month listening or taking, like, you are actually still detached from reality. And so we have to recognize that we are losing out on so much insight and value in how we can improve and how we can innovate and how we can adapt to changes in our market or the economy by not having these mechanisms, by not having people being willing to challenge us. So that to me is that is a great risk. And I think the last risk here is that we risk having the same people remain in charge. And like, here's what I mean by that. Like, every single one of us has a shelf life in our role. And to me, one of the most fulfilling moments has always been getting to the point where I realize, like, my team is ready to step into my role, and now I can step into what's next. And if we don't have these mechanisms, we are not creating the environment for those types of leaders to emerge. At least not intentionally, right? Those leaders most often emerge because forceful and disruptive decisions have to be made, right? Turns out you as a leader weren't helping the environment. And so guess what? It finally gets so bad that the business has to disrupt something as you as the leader get displaced. And that is a good thing, but it's also a devastating thing. Like, even if that next leader is amazing, there are cultural hits, there are like all sorts of hits. It is a way better situation. I would much rather every organization to say, look, this is designed so that in a year from now, in 2 years from now, in 5 years, whatever it is, like, Melissa's out of here. Like, Melissa's out of here, not because Melissa's not great and amazing, but it's like, Melissa has delivered so much value. Now we need to let Melissa deliver so much value somewhere else, because someone new is ready to deliver a value that only they can value, and is like, what Melissa did was amazing, but what's going to happen next is going to be even greater. Like, we don't talk about that, but that's the risk.
And I think that is the uncomfortable conversations that when I first met you, that's what you're saying is, I think leaders don't want to do that because they like the comfortableness of where they are, right? John Maxwell talks about raising the lid, the law of the lid. He's like, you have to raise up so those beneath you can, those that report to you they can kind of raise too. But your lid may need to be somewhere else in a different organization, or if you become an advisor, or you are now a creative mind, like Patrick Lencioni talks about, like you become a creative mind for that environment, and they actually put those things to action. These are uncomfortable conversations. I think that I want to introduce you as we close. I want to introduce you maybe somebody you don't know. Have you ever, and everybody at the table, just tell me if you know this person. Her name is Vesta Stout. Do you know a lady by the name of Vesta Stout?
Oh.
Okay, are you ready to learn something new, Justin?
Ready.
You've been pouring into us at the table, and we've been having a good time. And let me introduce you to one of my favorite people of all time, and her name is Vesta Stout. Vesta Stout, your mind gets to be blown away. You're just about to be blown away. Vesta, back in World War II, she had 2 sons that fought in the war. All right, and she worked in a factory where her job was to take ammunition boxes and dip them in this really thick wax. So if any of you know anything about ammunition boxes, They had to ship them all over the world, and they dipped them in this really thick wax so that the boxes wouldn't fall apart. The soldiers could get their hands on the ammo, but there was a problem. The soldiers, that wax is so thick and powerful, which it's supposed to be, right? They were having a hard time tearing open the boxes. Now, I don't know about you, Justin, or for the rest of my friends at the table. If I'm fighting in a war and I need to get to a bullet, I don't want to be battling my hands through some wax to try to get to it. But it came back to Vesta that this was a problem, that soldiers were actually losing their lives trying to get to their ammo. You with me?
I'm with you.
Vesta's got 2 sons in the military. They're out there fighting. She's the mom dipping the ammunition boxes in wax. And she's like, something's got to change. Something's got to change. So she said, in her mindset, it was, I don't know how to do it, but I know what's got to change. What's got to change is we've got to change something. How we do it, I don't know how, but I know my what is so important that we'll figure out the how later. So Vesta goes home. She starts she's just a factory worker, a mom with 2 kids, right? She starts sketching out what she thinks could happen, right? She sketches out this paper, and it's basically a tape that they dip in wax, and she brings it to her supervisor at work. Supervisor's like, Vesta, cool idea. We don't have time for this. Vesta didn't give up. Vesta goes back, and she's like, I really think we need to do something. She was so determined that her what was so powerful. She knew that they could figure out the how later. Supervisor turned her down again. You're not going to believe what Vesta did. Vesta wrote a letter. Justin's paying attention. Do y'all see Justin paying attention over here? Vesta wrote a letter to the President of the United States. She included her sketch. She said, I know you've got a son fighting in the war too. This is the problem. The what is, something has to change. Here's my idea of how it can change. I don't know how to make it work. I don't have the skill set to do it, but I know that there are people who do. He writes her a letter back. This is crazy. He says, Vesta, you're right. Something's got to change. I sent your letter and your sketch to our design team, and they are in the works of creating something as we speak. Do you know what they created?
Go.
Look at you.
I have ideas, but no.
Duct tape.
Come on.
Come on. I'm for real. Look at you. Duct tape. They took the sketch and they took a tape, dip it in that really hard wax, and then they started wrapping these ammo boxes. Long story short, the soldiers fell in love with that stuff. Well, look at it now. You can get duct tape in leopard and hot pink. You can get it in everything, but the soldiers would use it. Not only they would pull that tape worked so well. History has shown my grandfather used it as well. He would tape up his shoes because their shoes would get worn out in the military, and it was waterproof. You know, there's even stories where they tape up an airplane. They would use it for all sorts of stuff. It would tape up their weapons that broke. Vesta's what was so powerful that the how came later. And that made me think of this story of, you have to be, Craig Rochelle said, you have to be an unreasonable thinker. When we talk about what Justin has come on to talk about today is building a contact center, where a culture where everyone feels heard and valued. That's the what. All you have to do, if you're listening to this podcast, you have to decide what. Well, something has to change. And he gave us some hows, but you get with people, you find experts in the industry like Justin and his company, like an Etech, like other wonderful companies out there that can show you how to make it happen. Your what just has to be so powerful. So I'm challenging everybody to be like Vesta. Go in and have a raw, healthy look at your family, at your company, and say what needs to change. Voices are not being heard. People are not being valued. Your what has to be so important to you that you will figure out the how no matter what, and you can create the next duct tape. So there you have it, introducing you to Vesta Stout. What do you think about Vesta?
Melissa, I love it. And there's two things that jumped out to me, hearing you tell that story, and then even kind of coming to the landing on it. And the first is this: you and I have talked a lot about the role and importance for people that have leadership roles on our conversation today. But for people that are listening to this, that you're not the leader, and maybe you're thinking like, gosh, I wish I had a leader that was like that. I want every single one of us to remember that, like, we make conscious decisions every single day about where we do and don't invest ourselves and our time. And so, like, I hope everybody has the opportunity to work along and be the leaders that we talked about. But if you find yourself in an environment where that's not the case, like, don't, like we talked about it, like, you're a smart person, you have value to provide. And whether it's writing a letter to the president like Vespa, or just using yourself to go somewhere where it's valued, like, value yourself, I think is something that just kind of like just sat in the back of my head. And, to her, like, have her boss say, it's like, I don't, whatever. Yeah. Like, she valued herself and she put herself out there. And I think it's important to do that. The last thing that just stood out with me is, like, the thing that I am probably most passionate about and just wired toward is helping people become catalysts for positive change. And whether that's, a change in a product that you believe in, a change in an environment that you're leading, a change in a business that you're building, that to me comes down to two things. It's one, being able to lead yourself well, and knowing your biases, knowing your perspectives, knowing, it kind of blinders off what you bring and where you don't bring value, and then learning how to lead others well. Because I think if we do that, to your point, Melissa, like, we will be better friends, we will be better employees, we'll be better spouses, we'll be better parents, and we will have the ability to influence and drive whatever change is needed. Because I think any of us, no matter work or life, like, every single one of us can benefit from a little bit more positive change. And we all have the opportunity to be the ones who bring that to bear. Yeah.
I love that you use the word catalyst. It's one of my favorite words. A catalyst is someone who sparks action in others. And that's what you are, Justin. So we appreciate you being at the table today. You can come back and sit at the table anytime that you want to.
We didn't get kicked out.
We didn't get kicked out. We behaved really as much as we could. So I enjoyed you being at the table today. Podcasters, thanks for coming on. And I hope that you've got a what now that is going to be an ignition for you to go spark action in yourself. Because if it is to be, it begins with me, right? And that's where Justin's heart is. Justin, thank you for your time today. Podcasters, go enjoy the rest of your day. And until next time, we'll see you at the Etech Leadership Table, a podcast for leaders by leaders, helping you to grow personally and professionally. Thank you very much. Hello, everyone. Welcome to the Etech Leadership Table. This is a podcast where we invite you to pull up a chair, grab a cup of coffee, and join us as we tackle some remarkable discussions on everything leadership. I'm Melissa Wood. I'm your host. I'm the Dean of Leadership Development at Etech Global Services.